there in Moscow. And it comes just after Russia announced it will stage drills simulating the use of tactical nuclear weapons in the near future as a response to what it calls provocative statements and threats of Western officials. It's the first time that Russia has publicly announced drills involving such weapons, which, according to the AP, includes air bombs, warheads for short-range missiles, and artillery munitions. The tactical nukes are meant for use only on a battlefield and are less powerful than those of strategic nuclear weapons launched on ICBMs and the like. Other bellicose statements from Moscow about Britain and other U.S. allies supplying aid and military weapons to Ukraine, saying, well, if you're going to use those, we might hit you. More tough talk. Joining us now, Senior Coalitions Advisor for Concerned Veterans for America, retired Master Sergeant Jason Beardsley. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Let's start with just this new wave of saber rattling from Moscow. Is this something we should take seriously?
Of course, we have to take it seriously. This is an ongoing sort of escalation or brinksmanship between statesmen. And really, Putin or Russia at large is kind of facing the only game they have in town. Obviously, they ran into some supply chain and logistics problems in the early invasion. And now we're in a sort of protracted stalemate. So while the West has the option to bring in NATO forces, resupply, and they've been talking about sort of upping the game, this is Russia's answer. It's their response, and it's meant to kind of threaten the West with further protraction. And this is what we've been facing from the outset, is this idea of escalation can really get off rail if we're not careful.
So you mentioned that the battlefield itself, more or less a stalemate. Russia's made some grinding progress in recent weeks, but now the U.S. has finally passed its aid package to Ukraine, and some of that material is heading over. How do you foresee the next few months here as the weather gets better, as we move into another fighting season? There's been an expectation of Russia trying to launch a major offensive. How successful could they be?
Not incredibly successful. This has been a game of sort of on-the-ground maneuverability, and right now it's largely a defensive game. Russia has put a lot of effort into defensive canalization efforts, trench warfare, the dragon's teeth type concept that stops tanks and artillery. But in addition to that, they have a layered capability of strategic depth using cyber, electronic warfare capability. That has sort of hampered U.S. precision-guided weapon systems, GPS systems. And so what it's really done is this sort of ratcheting up of technology on both sides keeps sort of changing the game on the ground, which then ends up back in the infantryman's hand, back in the ditches, and it looks like moving the lines a little bit this way and a little bit that way. But over the long haul, this is a grind, and Russia's really prepared for the long, protracted stalemate.
And it seems like Putin also keeping an eye on November's U.S. elections before deciding what to do next. Lastly, and briefly, the White House confirmed yesterday that a U.S. soldier is now being detained in Russia. This is a soldier who was stationed elsewhere in Korea, had made his own way to Russia, was then arrested and accused of stealing. It's not clear of what. We know very little details about this. I asked John Kirby yesterday in the White House briefing about it. He said, look, we're not saying much just yet because of how tense the situation is. But without the details of this case, it's still yet another moment, though, where Putin potentially has another bargaining chip, another American that he holds as he tries to negotiate.
I mean, this is unfortunate. We're going to have to see what exactly unfolds here. But maybe on the other side, what you have here is an opening for dialogue, which is one of the most needed things in this conflict, because this is going to end at the negotiation table at some point. All wars do. So even though this is not an optimal situation, it is going to force back-channel communication with Russia, which is actually an opportunity to begin to talk through what the end of this looks like.
And, of course, we should take this moment to note that Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich has now been detained for more than a year on spying charges that he and the U.S. government denies. Retired Master Sergeant Jason Beardsley, thank you. Good to see you this morning. We really appreciate your analysis. Up next.